The snow fell like torn feathers from a wounded sky. A lone woman staggered through it, her dress stiff with frost, her breath a faint ghost that kept vanishing before her eyes. Clara Wynne, once a nurse in the war, now nothing but hunger and silence wrapped in wool. The wind sang against her ears, whispering the same cruel word over and over, alone. She carried a small black medical bag, cracked and fading, the only piece of her past that hadn't abandoned her. Each step through the Wyoming white was an act of will, not strength. She wasn't walking toward life anymore, just away from death. Then she saw it, a splash of red in the endless white. A blood trail, half buried by snow. It led her to a man collapsed beside a broken fence post, a revolver still frozen in his gloved hand. His face was gray-blue, his coat rich and fine, marked with the kind of stitching poor men never wear. Clara dropped to her knees, her fingers searching for breath at his throat. A pulse, faint but stubborn. She looked around, saw no house, no road, only the sky and the storm closing in. She dragged him, inch by inch, to the shadow of an old cabin buried half in snow. Inside, the air was colder than outside, the hearth dead for years. She found a match in her pocket, her last, and struck it against the wall. A small flame bloomed, trembling like her own heart. It caught on a candle stub, then on splinters of wood. She peeled his coat open, finding the bullet wound across his shoulder. The blood had half frozen, black as rust. She whispered to herself, not to him, "Hold on, stranger. I've seen worse." All night, she worked by candlelight, melting snow into water, tearing strips from her skirt to bind him. The wound wept slow and dark. She stitched with trembling fingers, her breath fogging the air. Outside, the storm keened like a mourning woman. At times she thought she saw her brother's face in the flames, the boy who died on her table years ago. She pressed her hand over her eyes until the vision faded. The man's pocket held a gold watch, engraved with E.T. For one long, dangerous second, Clara considered taking it. She could sell it in town for enough to live through spring. But then she set it beside him on the table, folding his hand over it like a prayer. "Not mine," she murmured. "Never mine." When dawn came, so pale it looked like the world had given up color, she heard a hoarse voice behind her. "Who are you?" She turned. His eyes were open now, cold gray eyes, sharp even through weakness. "You were bleeding," she said simply. "I fixed what I could." He tried to sit up, but groaned, falling back. "You robbed me while I'm down?" "If I wanted your gold, mister," she said, steady, "I'd have let the cold finish you." He stared at her a long moment, then looked toward the candle, still burning low. "What's your name?" "Clara Wynne." He nodded weakly. "Elias Thorne." She recognized the name. Owner of Thornmere Ranch, one of the richest men this side of the Wind River. "You're lucky I found you," she said softly. He gave a faint, bitter smile. "I reckon luck had nothing to do with it." For 2 days, she nursed him in silence. He washed her hands more than her face, hands that knew how to clean wounds, how to pour life back into dying men. On the 3rd morning, he said, "My ranch is south, past the ridge. If you help me get there, I'll see you repaid." "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" She met his eyes. "To get you home. After that, I'll keep walking." The world outside thawed just enough for the horses to move. They rode under a bruised sky, the snow turning to soft rain. Elias leaned against her on the saddle when pain took him, and she could feel the tremor of his breath against her shoulder. Neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy, not cruel, the kind that asks you to listen rather than fill it. By dusk, they reached Thornmere Ranch, a stretch of land wide as memory, its fences silvered with ice. The house stood tall but hollow, the porch covered in dust. Inside, the air carried the scent of old lilac perfume. On the mantel was a portrait of a young woman with soft eyes, his late wife. Clara didn't ask. The silence already told her too much. She built a fire in the hearth and boiled a thin broth. He tried to lift a spoon, failed, and she helped him drink. "You don't have to stay," he muttered. "I know." She smiled faintly. "But I will." Days passed. She mended his wound, cleaned the rooms, found comfort in small work. He watched her sometimes, as if trying to remember how to speak to another soul. When she burned her fingers cooking bread, he laughed, a quiet, startled sound, like it had been buried in his chest for years. Then came the knock at the door. Martha Doolin stood there, shawl pulled tight, her mouth sharp as her eyes. "Mr. Thorne," she said sweetly, "the whole town's praying for your recovery." Her gaze slid to Clara, then lingered, cold, judging. "So this is your nurse," she said, her tone dripping. "I heard tell she was looking for work. And a bed to go with it." Clara froze. Elias said nothing. Martha smiled thinly. "Be careful, Mr. Thorne. Some folks bring more misfortune than medicine." She left her words hanging like frost before turning away. Clara turned to Elias, face pale. "I'll pack my things." He sat forward, wincing at the pain. "Let them talk. They always will." "They'll talk about you," she said quietly. "Not me." Snow drifted through the chimney cracks, silvering the floor. She stood in that glow, fragile, proud, tired of running from shadows that weren't hers. He reached out a hand, but she didn't take it. And in that quiet, the fire whispered, the storm softened, and something wordless passed between them, something that would not melt even when the snow did. "Sometimes," the narrator murmured in the hush that followed, "the hardest thing is staying where you're needed, when the world says you don't belong." Weeks passed like slow-moving clouds over Thornmere Ranch. The snow thawed into gray slush, but the air still carried the bite of winter. Clara rose before dawn each morning, feeding the horses, sweeping ash from the hearth, and mending the same coat that had once kept Elias Thorne from freezing to death. The ranch had begun to breathe again, softly, cautiously, under her care. Yet outside its fences, tongues wagged louder than the wind that I in town. They whispered that the widow nurse had found herself a gold mine. They said she lingered at the ranch to inherit it. At the saloon, men joked that Elias must be lonely enough to let Charity warm his bed. Even Sheriff Harlan Crow, a man who prided himself on fairness, rode up one evening to deliver a warning masked as advice. He dismounted slow, his boots sinking into the thawing earth. "Mr. Thorne," he said, his voice tight, "folks are talking. That woman, she's bad luck. Every man she's tended to ends up worse off." Elias met his gaze from the porch, one hand resting on the wooden rail. "I ended up alive," he said. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "Just be careful. The town remembers things longer than truth does." When the lawman left, Clara came out from the shadows, her face pale. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He shook his head. "Don't be. You're the only reason this place ain't cold anymore." That night, she wept quietly by the kitchen window, her tears blurring the outline of the moon. She wanted to leave, to save him the burden of her presence, but every time she packed her bag, the thought of his quiet gratitude, his slow, steady recovery, anchored her in place. Days later, the wind turned fierce again. A snowstorm rolled over the ridge like a living beast, snarling through the chimneys. In the dead of night, Elias woke to the sharp scent of smoke. He stumbled to the window and saw the barn glowing red against the black sky. Fire, furious, alive, devouring, he ran into the storm half-dressed, his shoulder wound ripping open anew. Clara was already there, hair whipping, her skirts torn, trying to cut the horses loose. The flames painted her face gold and crimson, an angel made of ash. "Get back," he shouted, but she didn't hear. A burning beam groaned above her and broke loose. Without thought, Elias lunged forward, grabbing her, dragging her clear as the beam crashed and burst into sparks behind them. They fell together into the snow, choking on smoke, lungs burning. The barn roared like a dying beast. He could feel her shaking in his arms, but alive. "You should have left me," he said through gritted teeth. Her voice came soft and hoarse. "You think I came all this way to watch another man die?" He looked at her, eyes reflecting the fire. "Maybe I was meant to die that day. Maybe that's what was supposed to happen." She reached up and brushed the soot from his face. "Then maybe I was meant to find you." Something shifted between them then. Not passion, not yet love, but a knowing. A shared wound finally finding its twin. When the fire was out, dawn crept over a field of blackened timbers. The ranch was half ruined, but the house still stood. Clara dressed his reopened shoulder again, hands gentle as prayer. He tried to protest. She ignored him. As always, by noon, a crowd gathered at the gate. Neighbors, gossipers, and the sheriff once more. Harlan Crow dismounted and looked from the smoldering barn to Clara, standing behind Elias. "Some folks say she brought this on you," the sheriff said. "The fire, the trouble, the talk. Maybe it's time she left." Elias didn't hesitate. He stepped in front of Clara. You'll have to arrest me, then. This ranch is hers as much as mine. The sheriff blinked, taken aback. You can't mean that. I do. She gave me back my life. Seems fair I give her a place in it. The crowd fell silent. Some turned away, others whispered, but the sheriff only nodded, jaw tight. Then you'd better be ready to stand by that. Thorn. Elias looked back at Clara, voice soft now, breaking through the smoke and the noise. You came into my snow with nothing, he said. You gave back what I thought was gone, mercy. When the crowd left, Clara stood trembling, the weight of it all pressing into her chest. She didn't speak. He didn't ask her to. That night, the world outside lay black and quiet. Inside, the ranch felt like the heartbeat of something reborn. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window. Real gold, not firelight. Elias sat at the table, his shoulder bandaged again. Before him lay her old medical bag, stitched and polished, the brass latch shining. She frowned. What's this? He pushed it toward her. Open it. Inside, folded neatly, was a deed, small but official. To Clara Wynne, property rights and establishment of Thornmere Clinic, Red Hollow Township. She looked up, tears trembling in her lashes. Elias, I can't. You can, he said simply. You saved me. Maybe now you can save others. Her voice shook. Why would you do this? Because you never asked for a thing, he said. And because I owe you more than breath. She pressed the paper to her chest, words lost. For a long moment, the room filled only with the sound of the wind brushing past the eaves, softer now, almost kind. Finally, she said, then I'll stay, if you'll let me earn it. He smiled faintly. You already did. Spring came quietly, as if afraid to wake them. The snow melted into streams that whispered through the grass. Villagers passing the ranch saw a new sign hanging near the gate. Thornmere Clinic, Nurse Clara Wynne. Some tipped their hats. Others turned away, but the house itself seemed brighter in the meadow beyond. Elias taught her to ride again, slow and patient. She laughed, the sound like sunlight catching water. And for once, he joined her, laughter echoing through the hills. The narrator's voice returned, soft as wind over wheat. Some hearts don't meet in ballrooms or pews. They find each other in storms, when the world's too cold for most to stay. That's where mercy lives. And maybe love ain't about being saved at all. Maybe it's learning to save someone else.